Welcome to On Cue. I'm Michael Bartley. We begin tonight with a follow-up to a story we first brought you back in 2006, the renovation of the Andrew Carnegie Free Library and Music Hall in Carnegie. The work is still underway, but tonight there's big reason to celebrate as one of the building's most treasured rooms is about to reopen. The Captain Thomas Espy Post was a place where local Civil War Union veterans met for decades after the war. After falling into disrepair, the room has been lovingly restored. And as On Cue's Tonya Caruso reports now, the Thomas Espy Post is a true treasure of American history.
The Civil War was the defining chapter in our nation's history. It still resonates profoundly.
To find an original room with original artifacts, just like the day the veterans left for the last time.
I can't even begin to tell you how important I feel it is.
And they left us this extraordinary treasure, but we have a story to tell. We have a story to share forever.
It's a story of our nation's history, tucked away like a time capsule on the top floor of the Andrew Carnegie Free Library and Music Hall in Carnegie. This is what it looked like when we first visited the room back in 2006. It was here that local Civil War Union veterans met for decades after the battle. This was the home of the Captain Thomas Espy Post of the Grand Army of the Republic.
Captain Thomas Espy Post received its charter in 1879. Espy was from Upper St. Clair. He was killed in battle in Gaines Mills, Virginia, and that was the custom. You named a post after a fallen officer, usually.
Maggie Forbes is executive director of the library. Since 2003, she's led the campaign to fundraise, renovate, and restore this once grand building that had fallen on tough times. From structural work,
the first thing we had to do, of course, was restore the whole envelope of the building. Water used to pour in here.
To the beginning of interior improvements, there was a lot of work to be done. The crowning jewel, she told us, would be the restoration of this amazing room. Union veterans met here from 1906 until 1937. When the last veteran died, the room was closed and sat untouched for nearly 50 years until the 1980s.
It had been locked behind doors for 50 years, essentially forgotten. Mold, mildew, water damage, vermin, neglect, and some theft. But the library itself was in the midst of deeply entrenched poverty. There was nothing we could do except do no harm.
Some important documents were removed for preservation, and the post stayed as is until the latest library campaign. A few years ago, members of the 9th Pennsylvania Reserves, a nonprofit reenactment group dedicated to the preservation of the history of the Civil War, began to help to catalog and clean the room. But the real boost came in December of 2008, when an anonymous donor gave $100,000 to return the room to its former glory.
Isn't it? It's just an astonishing transformation. And it's the way it's supposed to be. And it's been bit by bit by bit. When the paint happened, I knew we'd hit a home run.
A home run made possible by an unlikely source.
The person who made this donation was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama. A son of the Deep South gave us the funding to restore a Grand Army of the Republic post.
A post that's grand in so many ways. Diane Kleinfelter is an author and library director here. She's written 2 books on the Civil War.
I believe that this is probably the only room left in the country that is exactly the way it was when the veterans met. There are other GAR posts throughout the country, but most of those have been turned into multi-purpose space. This room, for better or worse, was locked up all those years, and so we have all of the artifacts, the manuscript collection, the books. Everything is the way it was.
Which means everywhere you look in this room, there's a treasure. Treasures the veterans themselves counted and cataloged.
The veterans themselves, knowing that one day they would all be gone, and how important the relics were in this room, created an inventory of all their artifacts and how they came by it. And it's extremely valuable, not only to prove provenance for the artifacts, but also in the process of restoration. We had the actual photographs of the room, and so we knew where everything was placed.
From the official records of the Union and Confederate armies to uniforms, weapons, other manuscripts, and pictures, every artifact tells a story.
This picture shows that we have at least 3 African-American Civil War veterans that belong to this post. And to have an integrated GAR post at the turn of the century was highly unusual. The GAR didn't condone segregation, but we know that it existed. One of the artifacts that got my heart beating when I first came in and saw the room was the official ballot box. Yes, the potential members, prospective members of the post would apply. They were investigated to make sure that they were honorably discharged, and then they came before the post and were interrogated, and then they were voted on. And the voting was done with this box and the marbles.
One of the most unusual items in the room is this Union canteen, intertwined with a hornet's nest.
We know that it was cut from the tree by sons of a former Confederate veteran and presented in 1908 to the commander of this post, and it was brought back here to place amongst the artifacts. I suspect that a Union sniper climbed up a tree in Fredericksburg near General Lee's headquarters and stuck his canteen up there and forgot about it, and it was discovered in 1900.
Preservation of these items led to a laundry list of repairs and restoration work.
But what we had to do was put in a museum-grade HVAC system so that we could stabilize the collection and take care of it for the future, restore the plaster that was simply crumbling, paint it, put in new lighting, and the new lighting is restoring the original sconces and then getting some wonderful replica chandeliers made and a replica carpet.
Labor of love. Yeah.
Wayne Rabbit is a superintendent for Landau Building Company, which was hired to restore the room. He let us in on a little secret. While the display cabinets the veterans built in the room were made of oak, the rest of the woodwork was faux painted.
But the original wood that was in here was all pine, which is not oak, but painted to look like quarter-sawn oak. And in doing this, we had to have a painter come in and replicate it the best he could. And the painter and I actually found this at the top of the door in 1906.
So when the veterans were faux painting...
When they faux painted, they put their date that they took this room over as their post. I just was like totally amazed. At first I thought, the painter and I thought we were seeing things.
So what about the color on the walls?
We took a core sample from behind one of the radiators upstairs, a little circle, sent it off to a lab in Bryn Mawr. You know, this was sort of a gray, dingy, lots of water-damaged plaster. And I was hoping it would be beige, and it's not beige. We sort of call it pumpkin chiffon pie. It's a rich pumpkin pie color.
It's not like not what I would have pictured being a color that you would have painted it, but who knows, some of the wives might have been involved in this, and they might have figured that they needed some color.
After all, everything else was structured.
The room was laid out according to instructions set by the bylaws of the Grand Army of the Republic. The chair under Captain Espy's picture would have been the commander's chair. Sitting opposite him under the charter is the senior vice commander. We have the junior vice commander and the chaplain of the post. The 2 desks belong to the adjutant and the quartermaster, and in the middle is the altar, which was used for official ceremonies.
All as the veterans had lots of official work to do, making countless contributions to our country. Martin Neiman is a GAR veteran reenactor. He'll volunteer as a tour guide in the room.
They're responsible for Memorial Day, which originally started off as Decoration Day. They're responsible. They are the reason there's flags in public schools. There were no flags in public schools. There was no saying the Pledge of Allegiance in public schools. This was something in the 1870s that the GAR instilled and pushed for. 3 basic principles. There was fraternity, charity, and loyalty. Fraternity was sitting in a Civil War environment with their friends and recounting stories about the war. Charity, again, to help the widow, the disabled veteran, whether it's a bucket of coal or some food, or help with the rent. They did that. They raised money for charitable funds. And the third was loyalty, and in other words, it was patriotism.
And it's just another part of what makes the Captain Thomas Espy post so rare and so important. An incredible find with an incredible link to history.
The room itself has profound historical significance.
When you consider there were 6,928 GAR posts originally in the country, and of all of them, this is the most intact and complete post.
And they left us this extraordinary treasure, but that they gave us the key to bring it back, to know what it was like, to know what we had. It's just utterly invaluable. It still resonates profoundly. And we have been given the asset to keep that interest, deepen that understanding, so that people do know more about this very, very important epoch in our country's history.
Now, the big celebration of the reopening of the Thomas Espy Post will last all weekend long. It begins on Friday night with a special reception hosted by former Pennsylvania Governor Dick Thornburgh. On Saturday, the room opens to the public, and there is also a special exhibit, 100 portraits of Abraham Lincoln. So much going on there, Michael, so much for them to be proud of. And this room really is starting to get national attention.
Wow.
It is being seen as a national treasure.
It's the center of that community.
It is.
Tonya, thanks so much. And of course, for more information, you can log on to our website, wqed.org/OnCue.